Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. You'll be very evil. And you'll have that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work. Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cells.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Luthez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast. Subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good mic work commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
It is Saturday once again. Happy weekend to one and all, and welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast for August 13th, 2022. And man, I got to apologize right off the bat for my lack of videos this week. I've been getting my ass kicked to me at work, and it's my busy season. My boss just had a baby, and I have basically been president at my job. So it is really limited the amount of videos I've done this week, but I'm happy to announce we are back, ready to go, balls to the wall. Today will be the first of 3 consecutive live streams we're going to do. Starting today with the podcast, tomorrow, SummerSlam 1990 watch-along. Link is already in the description below. And on Monday, we're going to come up here and do a Raw review because I missed this past Monday's Raw. That was a pretty good show, saw the return of Dexter Lumis. And this week, we've got a pretty fun U.S. title match on tap already with AJ Styles challenging Bobby Lashley. In addition to the great SmackDown main event we had last night with Knockouts Nakamura and Gunther. It's really nice to see what I was hoping would happen as a result of the championship unification, that the IC in the U.S. would be elevated. I was way wrong on that. Who would have thought that it had nothing to do with the championship unification? And it had everything to do with Vince McMahon's horniness that has now helped to elevate these very prestigious titles that I'm happy to see get some recognition again under the watchful eye of Triple H. So, of course, as has been the theme for the past couple of episodes, we will be talking about a lot of Triple H stuff in this episode. Some of the returns that we saw this past Monday on Raw and last night on SmackDown with Hit Row coming back, and possibly more returns in the future. Bray Wyatt, Johnny Gargano, lots of names floating around there that Triple H could reach out and grab and bring back, since he has been a busy man. So we will be talking a lot about Triple H in this episode, trying to catch up on what we missed this week. We will not do full-blown reviews of all of the shows like Raw, SmackDown, and Dynamite, but we will talk about these shows overall. I will mention all of the bright spots, the great main event, the wonderful Quake by the Lake that we got on Wednesday. Saw a little bit of last night's Rampage, most of last night's SmackDown, just a lot to catch up on, in addition to all of the news and notes that we're going to get into. We're going to tribute Gene LeBell, who passed away this week at the age of 89. We're going to talk a little bit about the Lex Luger A&E biography that aired on Sunday. We're going to talk about Goldberg being done apologizing to Bret Hart. Ric Flair is already regretting his last match. Chris Statlander injured again. And Vince McMahon miscategorizing yet another $5 million in payments, this time due to some political donations. So add that to the list of the already, 15, million or so that he has mishandled, and the hits just keep on coming with those investigations, and I think there's probably going to be more to come there as well. But it's pretty much just going to be some news and notes, catching up on some results, talking about the ratings. Ratings were pretty decent across the board for all of the shows, especially in WWE, and we will preview Clash at the Castle, we will preview All Out, and we'll talk about the current ongoing trios or the launching trios tournament, I believe this Wednesday on Dynamite, and the ongoing WWE Women's Tag Team Tournament in the WWE. So a lot on tap for today. We're going to try to bust this out in 2 hours. I apologize and thank you to everyone who were aware that we were up a half an hour early. Normally we come up at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on Saturdays for the podcast, but I needed to come up a little bit earlier today because I got to get my ass out of here and head down to work. But very happy to be off the next couple of days. So tomorrow night we will be here together watching WWE SummerSlam 1990. Like I said, I've already thrown the link up on the channel. It is in the description below as well. And we'll be here for Raw on Monday. And I should be here for Dynamite on Wednesday, which we have another good-looking Dynamite on tap for Wednesday. So you should get GoodMicWork back to his normal schedule this week. Very excited about that. So I will be saying hi to you guys in the chat in 1 second. But first, I want to please ask you guys to hit the thumbs up button if you don't mind. And make sure you subscribe if you are not yet already. Been seeing a pretty decent uptick in subscribers over the past couple of weeks, which has been nice. So if you're not a subscriber, please make sure you do so. And like I said, please like that video. It's going to be a fun podcast. And like I said, we got a lot to get into this afternoon. But before I say hi to the chat, I want to let you guys know about a couple of things. I told you all about the watch along tomorrow, so you guys know about that. And we have now officially launched YouTube memberships, so you can now become a part and a member of the GoodMicWork family. I've been holding off on doing the memberships for a while because we still have Patreon, and I'm not real good at Patreon in terms of delivering on incentives and perks and shit like that. But the YouTube memberships are going to be a whole different story because now you guys are all right here in front of me, and I can deliver stuff to you, like give you early access to videos, do members only streams, whatnot. So if you are interested in becoming a member of the family, click the join button right below this video. It'll show you all the details, the different tiers you can choose from. This is no pressure at all. This is really only if you love the channel and you really want to support, and you can get different perks depending on which tier you join. But even the lowest tier basically has access to anything that I do that is for members only will involve all tiers. Does not matter what type of member you are, everybody is going to be invited to any members only thing that I do. And I think, once we get to 25 members, we'll do, maybe a members only stream, maybe watch a Monday Night Raw or Nitro that's together, that's currently on Peacock. We'll do the same thing when we get to 50, 75, 100, that sort of thing. And not to bore you guys with all the details, because there is a video explaining a lot of this as well. Some of the big perks that I'm going to implement once we get going with the memberships. The biggest one is going to be right here on Saturdays. I figured that once a week, and this is going to be only once a week, and this is also not going to start until the membership group grows to a substantial amount. Once that happens, I'm going to make the Saturday podcasts the chat, just the chat, for members only. Everybody can watch. You don't need to be a member to watch. You don't even need to be a subscriber to watch. You can watch the video, but in order to participate in the chat on Saturdays for the podcast, you need to be a member. I thought this would be a good perk to do, because a lot of people listen to the podcast on audio sites like Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, whatever, and like to listen to the audio form of this podcast. And I think if we reduced the amount of chat engagement on the podcast, that might help make the podcast a little bit more listenable for those who are not watching on YouTube. So that will just be a once a week thing. And like I said, we're not even going to start that until we get a decent amount of members in the group. I'm going to shout out all the current members right now, people who have already signed up. Another thing I'm going to be doing this weekend is updating all these cool emojis and badges that you can have with some Good Mic Work stuff next to your name. You're going to get a few perks that way. You're going to get weekly shout outs, as I'm about to do right here. And every stream that we're in, if somebody joins during the stream, you'll get a shout out right there. I will acknowledge you, welcome you to the family, and we'll be doing this pretty much every week or every single stream that we do, acknowledging the new members. So the membership program is now up and running. Thank you to everybody that's been so kind to support on Patreon. You're welcome to continue to support over there. Or if you would feel more comfortable transferring your support from Patreon over here to YouTube, that's totally cool. You can also support me on both. But I thought that at first I might just discontinue Patreon, but then I remembered that I support a few content creators on Patreon, and I want to keep doing that. So I'm not going to cancel the Patreon page. You guys can still support on that account if you would like, but you can also support here, which you are much more likely to get direct perks from me. And like I said, once the memberships get going, we're going to start monthly membership only streams, probably watch along stuff. I was thinking Raws or Nitros. Anything that can be found on Peacock would be a really good thing to do. I'll put up a members only post, let you guys suggest shows, and I'll pick the one that I like the most, and we'll watch them just for members once a month. We'll be doing that. You guys will get Twitter follows, like I said, weekly shout outs. If you donate a lot, you'll get a t-shirt. You're going to get all sorts of stuff. You just want to read through the tiers, and if you want to become a member of the family. If not, no pressure. Don't even worry about it. I'm just happy you're here. I really just want your subscription. So make sure you please subscribe and give me that like. But if you want to support on a higher level, you can do that right below. Click join and become a member. And I want to welcome all of the people who have already signed up to become a member for the various tiers that we have available. I want to thank my Shoot brothers. First, I want to thank Spectra, Victor Colon, George Morris. You guys are all my real deal brothers. My kayfabe brothers, we've got Isaac, we got Stephen Taylor as well, and then we got a bunch of new family members, Zach, Ian Dunn, Population 420, good to see you, my friend, met him at SummerSlam, JJ Legg, and Ian Dunn, or did I get Ian Dunn already? Anyway, let's just read them all so I don't jumble these up. Spectra, Zach, Ian Dunn, Victor Colon, Isaac, George Morris, you're the best. I got to answer a super chat from you as well. Stephen Taylor, Population, and JJ Legg. First ones to sign up, just in the first several hours there, so I appreciate that. If you want to join the family, do so below. Would love to have you. We also got a cruise over here to Patreon. Thank all of our current subscribers over on the Patreon page that really help pay the bills on this channel, the web hosting, just the overall fees and shit. You guys really help me take care of that, and I could not do this thing without you. So as always, I want to thank Zach, who is also a supporter on Patreon, Joseph Hudson, Chris Broski, Divine Ricks, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, Martin Can, Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Nick Musser, K-Dog's Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, who I think is also here in the chat. We have John Redifer, Claudio Clavadetcher, Daniel Rodriguez, Reese Jones, Josiah Blevins, John Riffle, Michael Kumo, Naveed, and Blake Moran. Thank you as always, guys, for your support on Patreon. Love you guys to death. And like I said, the Patreon page is going to continue, so you are still more than welcome to support over there, and you will get your weekly shout-outs just like you always do. But I also want to make sure that I acknowledge all of our channel members now that we have launched that. And as we go, I'm going to get much better and much better at the channel stuff. So just keep that in mind. Also, at the top of my YouTube page, you can start seeing the channel members showing up there, and you will start receiving your little badges, emojis, all that kind of fun shit as we go this week. So that's kind of what's new on the channel. That's what I've been up to since I've been so busy this week and haven't had time or haven't been home to do live streams for Raw, Dynamite, whatever. Been working on some behind the scenes stuff. So we got the memberships now up and running, and very excited that is now here. So thanks to those who have already signed up, and you guys are the best. So let's cruise over here to the chat. Stephen Taylor in the house. Nice to see our member, along with Red Raven Rucker, has just joined the membership program as well. Good to see you, my friend. Always nice to see you in the chat. And he is now a member of the family as well. And as we go, I'm going to do my best to recognize the memberships that happen during stream. So if I see one pop up, I will make sure to mention it. If for any reason I miss you, you will be acknowledged in the very next stream, because that's when I'll go through and catch up on everything that I might have missed. So just keep that in mind in case you are not acknowledged. But I will do my best to acknowledge everybody. Red Raven Rucker and Stephen Taylor are the early members in here now. I also want to thank George Morris for chiming in with the $5. Hey, Greg, how are you doing, and how are your cats? WWE still boring. Mike Barnes confirmed for Cobra Kai Season 5. What do you think he will do? Be safe. I saw that they kind of spoiled Mike Barnes. Some people were pissed about it. Oh, they spoiled it. I kind of thought we would expect to see Mike Barnes, so that didn't really surprise me that much. I think if they're spoiling something, it just means they got something bigger planned for us that will really shock us. So Mike Barnes coming back, I think, is the most interesting, because it now puts every single Karate Kid villain in the same series at the same time. We got Johnny, Chosen, and now Mike Barnes, all going to be a part of Season 5. And is there going to be a scene where they're all in the same fucking room? Whew. For a Karate Kid mark like myself, that's a pretty incredible thing to think about. I think they should do a triple threat match with Johnny, Chosen, and Mike Barnes. The winner faces Daniel at WrestleMania. That's what I would do. But as always, George, cats are doing great. Sorry you are still finding WWE boring. They still got a lot of work to do. They still have a lot of their typical WWE habits that we see on TV, but still, there is a clear message being sent by Triple H that shit is different now. So it's only been 2 weeks. Shit ain't going to change overnight. Hell, I'm going to give them until the end of the year type of grace period. But the fact that we're seeing changes this quick makes me pretty optimistic for the future. So I'm sorry that it's boring you, George, but it ain't boring me. I'm kind of liking what they're doing so far. Let me say hi to everybody else here before we start rolling into the news, because I was also 5 minutes late coming up to the chat today. But good to see Max Tatanani. Low Justin is here. We've got Sam and How Weezy and Sean Robinson in the Monkey Wrench party. Big J. We've got JL, Quan, Chaz, Ben. Ronnie's in the house. Rarely Even. Devlin Husband. We've got David Brown. Right on. 4-0. Nice. Glad to hear that, David. We got Matos. We've got Filipino. We got Zane. Nice. Yeah, glad you're here, Devlin, for once. Toxic is here as well. Sonic Plays, Steven. Life of Brandon. We got Isaac, another channel member in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Andy is here. Skull Vikings. Trey is back as well. We got Kevin. We got Seba, Ahmed, Beetle 911. All sorts of great folks in the chat. Let's rock and roll. If you guys have been with us the last couple of streams, we seem fine today, but our last couple of streams have had short, tiny interruptions for some reason. We got great internet. Everything is fine here, but there was a little, miscommunication between my streaming software and YouTube, and we shut down for a couple of seconds. I don't think that's going to happen today, but if it does and you see me freeze, just hang tight. I'll be back in like 10 to 15 seconds. It's usually pretty quick. I also want to welcome Max Pokebra 27 to the family, another new member just joining now. Max, it's always good to see you here in the chat. I know you are very vocal, and you always are really active talking to us and stuff, and I'm very happy to have you become a member of the family. Welcome, my friend. Happy to see that. Yeah, it's cool to see all these little badges, and like I said, these are going to get better. I'm going to put my own images in there, so these things will be next to your name. I just didn't have time to get into that this week, but that's going to be a project I'm going to do tonight when I get home, and I can come home and chill out and work on the channel. So let's get into some news, because we only have about 90 minutes or so left to finish up this podcast, and then I got to get going. So let's talk about comings and goings in WWE. When we get into the Raw and SmackDown stuff later on, we're going to talk about the return of Dexter Lumis this past week on Raw. And of course, last night on SmackDown, we saw the random return of Hit Row. Now, I wouldn't go so far to say it was that random, because their name had popped up just like Karrion Kross's name And just like Dexter Lumis' name, all of these names were kind of floating around the internet prior to their debut. A couple of websites had reported that WWE was in talks to them, or their names had at least been brought up in creative meetings. And then sure enough, very next show, they show up. So that's been fun for us to... It's not going to last forever because there's only a finite amount of people that Triple H is sorry that WWE let go that he can even get back anyway. So I think anybody that has the potential to come back to WWE, they have already reached out to, and we're going to find out soon enough if we will see Johnny Gargano, if we will see Bray Wyatt, if we will see Sasha Banks and Naomi, who are currently not scheduled for the tag team tournament, but might come back out and confront the winner when it's all over. We'll have to see. But I think the biggest name out there right now, along with Johnny Gargano, who many fans were expecting to see last Monday on Raw, is Bray Wyatt. And this week, Fightful Select had a really detailed article on Bray Wyatt and the thoughts on him coming back into the company from a behind-the-scenes perspective, and a lot of sources talking about Bray Wyatt's prior runs in the company and his relationship with Vince and some of the things that Vince McMahon would say to him, very derogatory things towards Bray Wyatt. Vince McMahon didn't really like Bray Wyatt, and a lot of these reasonings at the crux of them, according to this very well-written article by Fightful Select, so please go check that out and subscribe to Fightful Select, don't forget. In the crux of that article, a lot of that was that, Vince McMahon seemed to not like that Bray Wyatt kind of pushed back creatively in a lot of things. And that is such a direct, I guess it's just a direct contradiction of what WWE tries to claim that their wrestlers should do. When Vince McMahon says shit like, you got to grab the brass ring and nobody needs to go out there and get it and take initiative. And then as soon as you have somebody that does take initiative and say, hey, this is kind of getting a little boring, or this is getting stale, or why don't we try this, or this doesn't make sense, or hey, how about this? I think the fans would like this better. If you even say anything now, then Vince gets mad and criticizes your physique and just has a sour taste in his mouth about you. And it's shit like that probably led to the de-push or the downfall of so many pieces of talent throughout the years. It's almost frustrating to think about how many people were needlessly wasted because of, just the crazy thoughts ricocheting inside the skull of a 73-year-old fucking lunatic. So you hear about all this stuff and you see Bray Wyatt, what kind of a competitor he is, how different he is. I like the fact that he doesn't have a typical physique. That's what wrestling is about. If every single wrestler looked like Chris Masters, wrestling would be fucking boring. You need big, you need little, you need muscular, you need fat, you need everything. Everybody is welcome in wrestling as far as I'm concerned, and the more different or unique you are, the better, chance you have of really standing out. And I don't understand how wrestling fans or Vince McMahon can really focus in on somebody's physique like that while we put somebody like Mick Foley on a pedestal and worship his career because of how good he was. He is living proof that you don't need to have a six-pack to be a successful pro wrestler. And I cannot believe in 2022, when we're seeing all the more diversity and variety in wrestling that we've ever seen before, that these are still things that come up. So Bray Wyatt's physique is like the least of this guy's problems in wrestling. He's so good at what he does. Who gives a shit what he looks like? He's great, and he's good in the ring, and he's shown that he can perform time and time again. So for whatever reason, Bray Wyatt and Vince just never clicked. So now that Vince is gone, there's a lot of people that feel like it's almost like a done deal. Like they feel like it would be crazy if he didn't come back at this point, because any issues that were stopping him or preventing him from success before, as it related to Vince management, that type of stuff, or the the tug of war or the dissension or animosity in creative or whatever's going on with Wyatt, it really doesn't feel like those problems will be there with Triple H. And I think that's the message they've been trying to send to a lot of the talent that's coming back. Like we'll talk about with Johnny Gargano later on, I think it was Shawn Michaels was tasked with the job of reaching out to him and saying, do you want to come back in? And at some point, you feel like he will too. We saw on Monday there was all sorts of references in the Ciampa Lashley match to DIY and Gargano and shit like that. So, you really feel like these things are a possibility, and the fact that Bray Wyatt's name has been talked about in WWE even prior to Vince leaving, and now it really heating up again along with all these other names, it's just a matter of just kind of sitting and waiting to see when he's going to turn up. And we have lots of opportunities every single week on Raw and SmackDown now. There does legitimately feel like a reason to tune in because somebody might come back. Did you check out that SmackDown rating from last night? Holy fuck. They jumped in crazy. It was a humongous increase from the week before. I don't know why. I mean, I'm sure part of it has to do with the fans saying, oh, Triple H is in charge. Might actually be worth tuning into this nonsense yet. But that big of a jump, in that short amount of time, that was pretty surprising. So there really is a reason to tune into Raw, to tune into SmackDown, because we might actually see something awesome. We got Clash of the Castle coming up in a few weeks. It's a huge show. Could be a perfect time to bring back your Bray Wyatt, your Gargano, your Sasha Banks, whatever, and they might want to wait until there. But the cool thing is you don't, for once, WWE isn't crazy predictable, because for the first time in 40 years in that company, somebody else is heading up the creative process. So for once, we have no real way of, we still have a basic understanding of how WWE does things, and their whole entire philosophy isn't going to change 100%, but it's definitely become a lot less predictable now that Triple H is here, because you think Triple H would try to avoid predictable situations. Oh, the fans are going to see that coming. Let's do it this way. Where Vince doesn't have the ability to see that. And I think that to be able to look at Monday coming up in 2 days, a day that I used to dread just a few months ago. Fuck, Raw is on. I have to watch it, because if something crazy happens, I'll have to come up and do a video. But I'd rather dig spoons in my eyes than watch this shit. And now, instead, here we are just a few months later, and I'm sitting here saying, sweet, Raw comes up day after tomorrow. I'm excited to see that. Big matches already planned. That's the type of feeling that Dynamite gives me, because they got their shit together. They're planning stuff out. They'll give you a whole show, then they're going to tell you what you're going to see next week. All their issues, they're not perfect, and they still have some holes and some things to get better on here and there. But overall, their planning seems to be much more cohesive and together than WWE's that was just flying by the seat of their pants. Now with Triple H here, I feel like he's going to have a little bit more forward vision, know what he wants to do, stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of himself in order to ensure the best quality content for your product. That's how you do it. So I have, ever since Triple H has taken over 2 weeks ago, I have been gargling the man's balls and putting halos on his head, because that's how excited I am that he is there, because it's just going to get better. It can't not get better. WWE's still going to be WWE. WWE's still going to do WWE things. But in terms of having to watch a show, 5 hours of content from a company that, has been sucking so bad, I'm glad that things are going to turn around and are turning around so far under his watch. And Bray Wyatt coming back, Gargano coming back. If they do, Karrion Kross has just returned, Hit Row, Dexter Lumis, possibly some others. It's just nice to feel excited about WWE, and we're feeling excited about them during a time of year when shit usually slows down. Every year that I can remember being on YouTube over the last decade or so, it always seems like September through November just kind of sucks. So maybe it won't suck this time. Maybe we'll have an exciting and unpredictable fall and winter months right into our WrestleMania season. So we could be, staring down the barrel of a whole bunch of good months of TV in pro wrestling from both companies, and that's a good thing. So we'll keep our eye on how many more people show up back in WWE. But Bray Wyatt is one of the more interesting ones, because there's so many different ways and places you could insert him. He could come back completely on his own. If it was up to me, I might even dump The Fiend. I liked The Fiend. The Fiend was very cool, very different, very unique, but it was almost too over the top. So I would almost rather have Bray Wyatt come back as how he was before, but the Funhouse stuff had an element of appeal to it as well, and we got best of both worlds from Demon Bray and regular speaking Bray. So they might want to keep that up so they can insert him into Edge or Finn Balor or Judgment Day, or so he can interact with people. But or he can just come back as Bray Wyatt, kind of how he was when he was the leader of the Wyatt family. I don't exactly know how you would even bring him back in if you do, but whatever they did, I would make sure it's a surprise. I would not run vignettes for him or do anything like what you did with Edge. I would just have him show up, lights out, come back on, he's standing in the ring, something like that. That's kind of the way I would bring him back. Bring him back the way AEW brings everybody back. Lights go out, come back up, he's standing there. And I know the lights out thing is kind of played out, but if there's one character, that it would be warranted for, I think it would be Bray Wyatt for sure. So we'll see when he comes back. I'm excited to see him turn back up. At this point, I kind of feel like he will. A few months ago, if you would have asked me, I said, oh man, I really want to see him in AEW. I just think he could really spread his wings there. I think his promos would be great. All the people he could interact with, the people he already has history with there. Also Brody Lee had a presence in AEW when they first started. He passed away, and to see, some kind of, I don't know, nice incorporation of that, or a tribute, or some Dark Order affiliation would be nice. But, once Triple H took over and the old man is out, now I'm almost like, well, just go wherever you want to go at this point. Where before I was thinking more along the lines of a fan's perspective. Oh, I think I'd prefer to see them here. Whatever they choose is their decision, but as a fan, I think I'd prefer to see him here. Now with Bray Wyatt, that's totally changed. I still think he'd be awesome in AEW, but I'm not so fearful anymore if he goes back to WWE. If he goes back to WWE, I feel like they'll do right by him, or at least Triple H will. So we will see. Exciting times, like the thumbnail says. I'm going to cruise over here to the chat one more second because I want to welcome Reese Jones. Welcome, my shoot brother. Another member of the family has joined. Glad you have joined, my friend. It's always good to see you here most weeks contributing to the chat. He's been a Patreon supporter. He has donated to have videos done. Reese is the man. So happy you're here, my friend. And welcome to the memberships, and welcome to the family, dude. I appreciate that. Speaking of crazy Vince McMahon, the investigation into WWE's financial dealings has uncovered yet another $5 million in payments related to Vince McMahon. Now, luckily for him, I guess, kind of, this is unrelated to the already $14.6 million, I think, in hush money payments that he had paid out. This $5 million is not for hush money. This has to do with some Donald Trump campaign contributions and political donations from 2007 and 2009. Now, 2007 is also the same year that Little Tiny Hands competed at WrestleMania in the shaving the head match or whatever. So maybe one of those payments could be paying him as being a performer. But whatever it was basically just financial mismanagement, a miscategorization, I can't even fucking say categorization of funds. I cannot speak today. So he miscategorized this money, and when it comes to the IRS, that can really fuck shit up, especially when it's $5 million on top of the $15 million you've already screwed up. So that is basically just more headaches for WWE, but it's stuff that they are correcting, and they have to, submit these corrections to the IRS and make all of this right. So, at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. It's going to be a huge IRS headache, and it's really, really revealing and exposing a lot of financial mismanagement by Vince McMahon, and you have to wonder how much more they're going to uncover if they continue to dig, which I believe they still currently are. So I don't know when the entire investigation is finally going to be done or put to rest, and when they're going to reveal their full findings and it's all finally over, but it's possible another $5 million or another couple of million could turn up here or there depending on what these are for. And the claim that this $5 million had to do with the political donations was courtesy of Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics. He was the one that reported this. So not a big deal there. It's just kind of when you read that, you just think it's funny because I'm like, Jesus, Vince. Vince McMahon at one point 25 years ago was so close to going out of business, that he wanted out of Bret Hart's $20 million contract and was doing everything he could to save money, and they were living check to check, and people were taking pay cuts, and Nitro was breathing down his neck, and he was just right on the cusp of complete annihilation. And man, you turn around 20 years later and the dude is just paying out women left and right and having affairs and being gross. And oh my God, I am not going to miss Vince. Anywho, let's talk about Ric Flair, another crazy old man. Of course, Ric Flair had his last match SummerSlam weekend in Nashville in that tag team affair with Lethal and Jeff Jarrett and Andrade. And Ric Flair was a mess in that thing. He could barely move. He passed out 4 times in the fucking match. He barely got through it. He was winded. He was gassed. He literally looked like he was a walking corpse. Mouth open, breathing, blood on his face, hair messed up, cross-eyed, didn't know what the fuck was going on. The fact that he even had a match and it went well and he didn't die, to me, was a tremendous success. Nothing will ever be as great as the send-off that he had in 2008. I still to this day cannot believe that, Ric Flair and his terrible money management and his alimony payments have forced him to, undo the greatest send-off wrestling has ever seen just to get another payday. And he always seems to be hard up for another payday no matter what. And he gets through his last match without dying. And then this past Sunday in Puerto Rico, I guess he was in the corner of Andrade. He got into a physical altercation with Carlos Colon, who's got to be older than Ric Flair at this point. These two guys were both in the 1992 Royal Rumble. Now that I think about it, they might have even mixed it up a bit in that Rumble. But Flair and Carlos exchanged punches, and then Flair would go on his podcast to say that he wishes he didn't say Nashville was his last match, implying that maybe he wants to get back in the ring again. This is exactly why I don't like Ric Flair. I've just completely lost any respect and love for him. This is so crazy. It's sad and pathetic to see a guy just cling so hard to the past and refuse to ride off in the sunset and refuse to take the wonderful career that he has made as arguably the greatest of all time and be content with that. And the fact that he's never content and he's always looking to do more. I guess that's the mind of a pro wrestler. That's what happens to you if you spend your entire life on the road living this one way. It's really hard just to go home and sit on your couch now. I get it, but you should try. And Ric Flair, if he lets these people, Conrad and everybody else who worked hard to put that entire show together, the people that they brought in to do it, to help with the tributes, the people involved in the match, the fans that paid tickets, the people that met Ric Flair, and for him just to have another match in 6 months, a terrible match where he can't walk or move or do anything like that. I don't know. I just wish he would fucking stop. So he was probably just saying this in jest. Might have been out of context. He might have just been saying, boy, I really wish I wouldn't have said that was my last match. He might have just meant it like that. But with Ric Flair, you can never be quite too sure. When you're having matches when you're 73, I don't think anybody can sit here and confidently say, oh, good mic work, he's not going to come back. What the fuck are you talking about? He had a match 2 weeks ago. So I think maybe he will. We will see. But if he does, I'm not going to spend a dime to see it. He will never receive a penny of my money. Even on the Jericho cruise, I met everybody except Ric Flair because Ric Flair was charging. Fuck him. So Flair, stay out of the ring. You had a great career. Leave it at that. And you will not, the fact that you were still able to get a pretty damn nice send-off in Nashville despite, the great send-off that you ruined from 2008, just quit while you're barely ahead. You know what I mean? So we'll see if Ric Flair crawls his ass back in the ring again or not. Some sad news to report on Chris Statlander. Poor girl was injured yet again, tore ACL. I think I saw a clip of this happening. I think it was on Dynamite or Rampage or Dark, or it was one of their shows. I saw it on Twitter. And her knee, she was just doing some random movement. Her knee just buckled on her. And I think it was when she was going down for a cover or a pin. I don't even remember who she was wrestling, but you could clearly see something happen to her knee there. And she posted an update today on Instagram, or maybe it was yesterday, of her working out. And she basically said that she has torn her ACL and she has no surgery date yet planned, but she's been working out the knee. And it showed a video of her just working out this leg with a torn ACL, working it hard basically to help with the atrophy during recovery. So she is not letting this injury slow her down. She was already out for close to a year with the same knee or the other knee perhaps. So she is out again. That's a shame because she's really starting to improve. Fans are starting to take notice. She kind of underwent a little bit of a gimmick change as well, and she is really beloved by the audience. And I think a lot of people have her on their radar as somebody that will probably be a world champion within the next year or two. So we'll see if this slows her down or not. But all the best to Chris Statlander. That is a shame. Before we talk about this next one, which is kind of funny, I want to talk a little bit about Goldberg and Bret Hart. But before we do that, let me cruise back over here to the chat and make sure we are all straight over here. Good to see DJ Scandalous in the house. Welcome, my friend, Alex Hernandez and Chris and anybody else that's been rolling in. Transferring Heat is here as well. Anybody else? And Sonic Plays, anybody else that's been rolling in while I've been flapping my gums, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. Also, if you could do me a favor and help get these likes up, they're a little low for my liking, and please hit me with that thumbs up, and I would appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about Goldberg and Bret Hart. Now, Goldberg, this is so funny to me. Now, we all know the storied history between Goldberg and Bret Hart. Goldberg kicked Bret Hart in the head at Starrcade in 1999 that led to Bret Hart having to retire for concussion reasons and all of that. Throughout the years, Bret Hart has been hilarious, burying Goldberg every chance he gets, every interview, just shits on him. There's even There was even some video of a fan approaching Bret at a signing and said, "Hey, the date is August 10th, 2022. Does Bret Hart still hate Goldberg?" And Bret goes, "Yes." And I just really find that really to be comical to me. I love it. It's really funny. It's Bret just bearing the world is something that all fans, I think, can kind of get a kick out of. And as you guys know, Bret was my favorite wrestler of all time. He's the only guy I've ever really been a fangirl of. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with everything Bret says. I think if you completely worship and believe and buy into 1,000,000% of everything your hero says, then you're a weak and naive person. So you have to understand that your heroes are not always going to say things that you agree with or say things that really even make sense sometimes. And a lot of Bret Hart's complaining does sometimes come off as bitter. I will fully admit that. Sometimes Bret's burials of other talent is hilarious, and other times it's quite shocking. And with the Goldberg stuff, Goldberg has almost killed a lot of people. There was a clip floating around this week on Twitter of one of his early matches on WCW Saturday Night, where in the span of about 20 seconds, he nearly killed Meng and Jimmy Hart, dropping them both on their head. And he was extremely reckless in the ring, and he was accused of being careless and injuring people a lot of times. So he already kind of had that reputation. Then when he kicks Bret, that didn't really help matters any. And Goldberg was really not in a very good system because his style was so intense. And when you put a guy that has a hard-hitting style in the ring with very little experience, he's probably going to hit you for real. And that's what Goldberg wound up doing to a lot of people. So Goldberg kicking Bret did end Bret Hart's career. You would think that, Bret Hart would have a reason to be bitter and all of that. But I clearly remember just a couple of years after Bret Hart retired, he did shoot interviews. I have a whole collection of Bret Hart shoot interviews, a couple from hotel rooms, some RF video shoots. Trying to think who else did the Bret Hart shoots. I have a bunch of them. And in these early shoots, I would say they were from maybe 2004 to 2010 or 2008 or something like that. That little chunk in the mid-2000s there. Anytime Goldberg was brought up to Bret Hart, he defended Goldberg. He said, "There's no hard feelings. It's okay. It's just an accident. I like Bill. I thought him and Bill Goldberg got along while they were in WCW." Goldberg even said Bret was kind of like a little bit of a mentor to him in WCW because everybody in WCW, everything was so political and all those big stars there making all that big money. You had somebody coming in like Bret Hart with his mentality, his training, his history in the business, and he was really able to, kind of help ground Goldberg a little bit. And Goldberg gave Bret a lot of credit for that. And in the early days, Bret would go on record and say that he had no issue with Goldberg. He might be a little bit, upset with maybe Goldberg's lack of experience, maybe making a little comment, but overall, he always acknowledged that it was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. No hard feelings type of thing. But then Bret's tune drastically changed over the years to now he blames Goldberg for everything. He shits on Goldberg every chance he gets, calls him worthless, a scumbag, all this stuff. So I have no idea what changed. Maybe Goldberg has said some things in interviews over the years that Bret got wind of, or maybe Bret just forgot that he had no problem with Goldberg years ago, and now he's starting to talk shit about Goldberg. I don't know. I'm not a Goldberg fan. Goldberg is one of my least favorite wrestlers ever, and Bret Hart is my favorite wrestler ever. So with that already being disclosed to you, I can still say that I'm kind of on Goldberg's side on this one, because at this point, I feel like Bret is just burying Bill to bury Bill, where before he didn't really blame Goldberg too much for that. And Goldberg recently appeared on Talk is Jericho, which is really interesting that they have such a good relationship considering all of their heat and backstage fight that took place between Goldberg and Jericho. Goldberg on Jericho's podcast basically said that he's done apologizing to Bret. He said, "I've apologized to him for years, and he constantly shits on me anyway, and he's over it. He's just fed up, and he's not going to do it anymore," and basically just told Bret to go fuck himself. And that's understandable, to be honest. Like I said, Bret never really had any problem with Goldberg up until a few years back, where every chance he got, he just started trashing him in interviews and stuff. So Goldberg's had enough. We'll see if these two guys ever, do the same signing or the same convention, and if there's ever some words exchanged there, because Bret seems to have heat with a lot of guys, and sooner or later he might bump into one of these guys. And Goldberg, Mr. Alpha Male, he's probably going to want to get in Bret's face. Maybe Bret should just bring Riddle along with him so Riddle can twist Goldberg up in a pretzel and make him cry. But hell, I think Bret might still even be able to have a chance to beat Goldberg's ass now. I think Bret could have beat up Goldberg back in his WCW days, but maybe not now because Goldberg, for his age, is still in incredible shape. But if Jericho could take Goldberg down, Bret definitely could. So one day, maybe these two will cross paths at some sort of a convention or whatnot. Zach, good to see you, my friend. Welcome. Yeah, and Max is right. Bret takes himself too seriously. He does, but, that's why, it's okay to not agree with your heroes. Bret's my favorite professional wrestler of all time. I don't have to agree with everything he says in interviews, and I don't. I agree with a lot of what he says, but certainly not all. And even with someone like Goldberg that I don't even like, it's hard for me to kind of see Bret's point of view on this. Accidents happen. If Bret, it's a hard subject to even bring up, but if Bret is willing to admit and understand that WWE dropping Owen from the ceiling was an accident, because it was horrible, but it was still an accident, then Bret should also understand that Goldberg kicking him in the head was also an accident. Freak accident, shouldn't have happened, could have been avoided, but didn't. At the end of the day, no malice was intended. And if Bret can make that admission about Owen, why can't he make that admission about his head and the kick? You know what I mean? So just think about it a little bit, Bret. That's all I ask, and I say that as someone who loves you. A&E continued their WWE Legends biography series this past Sunday with Lex Luger. Now, I've been really looking forward to this one because, as we all know, Lex Luger was supposed to have a WWE Icons doc released on Peacock last July 4th. Not just this past July 4th, July 4th of 2021. So they waited a year and a month to finally deliver this thing to us, and I don't even think the Icons doc was in its entirety, has been now incorporated into the A&E bio, and I think they probably used a lot of footage filmed in the Icons thing for that as well. And I've watched all the episodes so far. The Kurt Angle one was very good, and the Bellas, and I forgot what other ones we were on. I think this is the 4th or 5th installment here. And the Luger one was one of the ones I was looking forward to the most because we were already supposed to get a piece on Lex last year. And I knew this was going to be an interesting one because of Lex Luger's long storied career and all the drama that he's had in his career and all of the different places and championships he's won. It was going to be a really interesting story to tell, and with him being a part of this documentary, because for years, Lex was not on good terms with WWE. They really had a sore spot for him when he left and showed up on that first Nitro and left in the middle of the night type of thing. And I don't think Vince really ever forgave him for that until years and years later when they started working together, interviewing him for documentary pieces and whatnot. And he slowly kind of crept his way back in. And now we got an entire biography on Lex. We are still yet to see Lex go into the Hall of Fame, but I kind of feel like that could potentially happen now if WWE is comfortable with doing that. But if they were comfortable enough partnering up with A&E to do a 2-hour biography on Lex, I don't think they would be really hesitant at this point to do the Hall of Fame, no matter how controversial Lex Luger's life was. Now, of course, we're not going to review this whole thing. I just want to mention a couple of key parts here in the biography that I thought was interesting. One thing that I did think was interesting, and that I will give them credit for, because one thing that I'm always going to look at these bios with a little bit sideways is we have to remember, told from WWE's point of view. A lot of this stuff is WWE retelling their version of history. You don't have to look any further than to see Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn's name on the executive producer credits to know that that's the case. So anytime that they're honest, I'm usually appreciative of them being honest, and they definitely were honest on Lex Luger here. They didn't try to paint him as a hero or anything like that. And even Lex himself during the documentary was honest about his past attitude, his past mistakes. Everybody talked about how he kind of came off as cocky, as arrogant, rubbed people the wrong way, and perhaps didn't endear himself to the locker room that much just because of his background and his look and his physique, and he came from a football background and been lifting weights his whole life and had a good body and knew it and basically carried himself that way. So Lex has always kind of had that reputation that would even carry into his WWE run. They talked about him leaving WCW, going to WWE. I think it was Ric Flair leaving WWE that really gave him the idea, hey, I want to go there too, joining the WBF and being a part of that, and then coming in as the narcissist. And that was really interesting too, because one thing I always thought, and I guess I never knew this or learned this before, but we've talked about it here on the channel, and that is Lex Luger's debut at the Royal Rumble in 1993, when Bobby Heenan introduced him and unveiled him basically as his new guy to go after Mr. Perfect. I always thought it was funny the way Bobby Heenan pronounced narcissist. He kept calling him narcissist. I'm like, what the fuck is a narcissist? And during the biography, they show some of Lex's, mock-up drawings for his gimmick and his character. And when you see the name written there, it is spelled different. And my girlfriend pointed it out to me. And she goes, no, look, it says like Narcissus. It's spelled like Narceus or some crazy shit like that. So I think they actually were planning to name him that, and I never knew that. I just thought that Bobby Heenan didn't know how to pronounce the word. So that was kind of interesting. Another really interesting kind of peek at the backstage area around that time was an awesome 3 or 4 second clip of basically a backstage creative meeting in around 1995, probably right around the time Lex was leaving, because of the shirt he was wearing is what he wore at SummerSlam 1995, about a week before or 2 weeks before he turned up on Nitro. So this might have been right at the end of his run. But in that meeting, you could see Gorilla Monsoon, you could see Todd Pettengill, Tim White, Howard Finkel. I think Vince was in there. Luger was standing around, Bruce Pritchard, Patterson, Strongbow perhaps, all of the agents, Gurria, all the agents in the WWE around that time were all sitting there in this little conference room. And it was just like, man, I wish I could just pause it and go into that room and sit down and talk to everybody. It would just blew me away. More of that, please. And whenever I see stuff like that in a WWE documentary or a WWE biography or piece or whatever, it makes me wonder and realize how much of that shit exists. Like if you were able to go and spend time in the WWE tape library, the things you could see, because we only see what's aired, but the cameras are always rolling. The cameras are always on backstage. There's no telling what interactions or conversations have been caught on camera or, anything really interesting. The little tiny gems and Easter eggs and, diamonds in the rough you can find in footage like this. I would love, especially from this time period, like the 90s, I would love to go back and look at every single minute of footage WWE has from behind the scenes. I just found that fascinating. They also talk very much in detail about Lex leaving WWE and going to WCW. And this is one part of the biography where I'm going to call bullshit on. Now, I'm just guessing here, but I just don't believe it for a second. And Eric Bischoff tells the story. He's interviewed for this, of course. And he tells the story that he's told before, and he kept this part of it real, or he kept this part of it consistent. And he's always told the story that when Sting spoke to Lex Luger about leaving WWE, coming back to WCW, and Sting went to Eric Bischoff with this information, that Bischoff didn't want to hire Lex, that Bischoff didn't like Lex Luger. Now, Bischoff has said this for years, even dating back to the Monday Night Wars DVD they did in 2004. Eric Bischoff said this. He goes, I didn't like Lex and I didn't want him to come in, but I did it as a favor to Sting. So what I decided to do was lowball Lex on an offer. Now, Eric has always mentioned that he lowballed Lex. He has never mentioned the dollar amount, ever, until this biography. All of a sudden, Eric Bischoff reveals that the amount that he offered Lex Luger was $150,000. Horseshit. I don't believe it. I think that's way too low. Even in 95, when things were in business was not great, especially in WWE, I cannot imagine Lex Luger taking that $150,000 deal. I think that's Bischoff kind of sensationalizing this for the sake of the documentary. I'm sure he lowballed him. I believe him on that. I don't believe it was $150K. I think that's way too low. At the time, Lex was always looking for the better. They even said this multiple times in the biography, that Lex was looking for better opportunities for himself, his career, and his family, looking to go where he could make more money, which is why he kept bouncing around everywhere. He would not have taken a third of a pay cut. At the time, I don't know what he was making in WWE, but if Vince is about to make him the born-again Hogan, then he was probably making in excess of $500,000 a year, probably close to that million mark, maybe. That's just a guess. But it had to have been over $500K, So at least I would think. So for him to accept that offer makes no sense. So even though I don't know this 100%, I don't have any facts to present to you guys to show you that Bischoff is lying, I do not believe for a minute that $150,000 was the offer that was accepted by Lex Luger. hey, you want to take a third of your payment, a third of your pay, or a third of your WWE salary, or a fourth of it, or whatever? And Lex says yes. Unless that was the base pay, I'm starting you at $150K, and then you get all these fucking incentives or something like that. I don't know, but there's no way he would have said, I will pay you $150,000 this year, and Lex said okay. Now, Bischoff did go on to say that he didn't renegotiate Lex's contract after he was there for a while and he proved himself and the fans liked him and he gave him more money, but I really find it hard to believe that Lex worked that first year for $150K. I just don't buy it at all. The hardest part of the biography was, of course, when they got kind of near the end of Lex's career, the end of WCW, his relationship with Miss Elizabeth, and, of course, her death and everything that happened there. And he went into great detail about the night that she died. I've heard him tell this story before. Years ago, he did a shoot interview. Might have been with... I forget who it was with. Again, I always forget who do these shoot interviews. But I remember him having to stop it, cut it off while he was talking about this because he was going, and this is just a few years after it happened. So now they get to this part, and at this point, Lex has already been hard into the drugs. He admitted that he had been taking a lot of pills, doing a lot of drinking, might have even had an arrest by this point and gotten a little bit of trouble. And then he is with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, who you guys all know, was, one of my favorites, one of my biggest childhood memories. Her and Randy Savage were a big part of my early wrestling life. She was an absolute angel in my world, way too good for the wrestling business, and I was just destroyed by her death. I just hated that happened and how it happened and the fact that she got caught up in Lex's shit. And for years, I was pissed at Lex Luger too. I blamed him, this fucking asshole. He sucked Miss Elizabeth into his nonsense, but at the same time, Elizabeth is a grown woman who makes her own decisions as well. And she chose to be in this relationship. She chose to go down these roads. And, and that whole thing is just sad. But to hear Lex talk about them just, hanging out late at night, watching movies, and, they're both taking some pills, and he goes and microwaves some dinner and comes back and she's unconscious and he can't wake her up. And they play, of course, the 911 call, which is horrible. And I remember when all that happened and reading about everything online back in 2003 when she died. And then right after that, seeing how the police had raided Lex's home and found steroids and found pills and arrested him for all this drug possession. And that was going on at the same time of the Miss Elizabeth death. So, it made it seem like, Lex was really responsible for this, which was not really the case. It was, just two people making really, really bad decisions, and it cost one of them their life. And that was just a tough part to watch, and then Lex had to go into talking about his own health problems and then his, the back problems that he would have that would, put him in a wheelchair. He can still, kind of move around and stuff, but he was really stuck and basically paralyzed in the hospital for quite some time. Sting even talked about having to feed him and with a spoon and whatnot. And Lex kind of trying to recover from there. Also talked a lot about his religion and his faith that, that Sting really helped Lex Luger with. And this is what we've seen. I always consider, I think of a handful of wrestlers in the business. I think of Lex, I think of Sting, I think of Shawn Michaels, maybe Ted DiBiase to a degree, and a few others who have led the fast life and have really hit rock bottom and basically had nowhere else to turn, and they turned to religion. I'm not a religious person. Most of you know that. But if religion helps keep people like Sting, Lex Luger, and Shawn Michaels on this earth, then I don't care what it takes. You can believe in whatever you want if it cleans you up. And I'm happy that Lex had that. I'm happy that Sting was able to, just like Shawn had his wife, who kind of got him into the church or whatever. And that was what it took to get him on the right path. I don't care what it takes to get you on the right path. Just get your ass on the right path. Some people can do it without anything. Some people need help. Some people need religion, whatever it takes. And the fact that Lex Luger is able to sit here with us now and be able to talk about his life and not be dead, largely in part because of his, being able to turn his life around and finding that faith and having friends around him that helped him, pick himself back up. He's found a relatively decent amount of peace now. I think Lex admittedly still has a lot of work to do. He does not have a good relationship with his kids, apparently still to this day, but he's, trying to make the best of his final days, and at least you have to respect that. So it was a pretty good biography, one of the more interesting ones. This one and the Kurt Angle one I was really interested in, probably the most, and been looking forward to this one for the better part of a year because I was never really a big Lex Luger fan, but always very interested in the Lex Luger story because he has an interesting one. So if you have not seen the Lex Luger A&E biography, check it out. It's very good. And yeah, be looking forward to the next one that will be head-to-head tomorrow night with our SummerSlam 1990 watch-along. Does anybody know what the biography is tomorrow? I actually don't know. Yeah, it was deemed strange that Lex was never brought back. Yeah, kind of, but by the time WCW was bought out, Lex was still in okay shape, but I just felt like he was really on the decline. I did not think he was a good wrestler ever. And by this point, he was just getting a little bit older. WWE, I think, still could have brought him in, especially during the invasion. He would have been a great part of that invasion angle, but Vince, you remember the night of the buyout, the simulcast right there, Jeff Jarrett and Lex Luger. Vince basically just fired them both on live TV, and Luger never got a chance to come back to WWE. And they also talked about that in his WWE run during the Lex Express stuff. That was another interesting part of it because they showed a lot of behind-the-scenes footage of the Lex Express, and the bus, and they talked a lot about Lex being a baby. That was the funniest part. And Bruce had even said, he goes, I had to travel on that bus with Lex, and after a couple of days and a couple of weeks, I'm like, I don't know if this is the guy. Usually our champion, our, poster boy, the guy that we're sending out into the world is somebody that likes to do the public appearances, can interact with the fans well, but he's complaining, he's whiny, he doesn't want to do it, he's sweaty, he's hot, he's always hungry, he's just got problems. He just does not seem happy about the opportunity that he's getting. He's got this fucking bus. He's driving around, and he's got this big title shot against Yokozuna at SummerSlam. And they also talked about how ludicrous the SummerSlam match was when he won by countout and the balloons came down, and it was like a celebration, and how that killed it and kind of killed him, and then he never went on to win the title anyway. So it was all an interesting time, and I remember being a big Bret Hart fan back then, just hating the push that Lex was getting. I'm like, what are they doing? We're finally rid of Hogan. You're trying to make another one? Yeah. It would take Vince until WrestleMania 10 to finally see the error of his ways there. We got to get into some wrestling results here in a minute, but first, we need to pay tribute to a major wrestling death that took place this week. Judo Gene LeBell passed away at the age of 89. You talk about a fucking career. My God. For those who don't know, Gene LeBell was a very, very famous mixed martial artist, submission catch pro wrestler. He was an actor, stuntman, and trainer. Trained lots of guys, Ronda Rousey included in those batch of names. Absolutely insane life. If you look at this guy's IMDb filmography and his work as a stuntman, stunt coordinator, or actor, I knew of some movies that he had participated in. I can name a handful off the top of my head, but when I was reading through them last night, there was probably 30 movies that I had heard of that he had participated in some way that I didn't even know about. Blown away. I would write them down here for you, but it's literally hundreds. Just go look through it. You'll be blown away how many movies this guy actually worked on. And I did know that he did plenty of movies, just not that many. Holy shit. If any of you have seen Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood film that just came out a couple of years ago, Brad Pitt's character, Cliff Booth, is based off of Gene LeBell. I just watched the movie for the first time this year. I think it was earlier in the year, maybe January, February. We watched it, and I loved it because of the ending. Some people aren't fans of, a retelling of history, to give, people a sense of revenge or something like that. A lot of people aren't fans of that type of story. But that ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was one of the most satisfying endings of any movie I've ever seen, with Brad Pitt stomping the living shit out of those people and caving the guy's face in. And it was just awesome. It was so brutally violent, but also so satisfying at the same time to see these fuckers get what should have happened to them in real life all those years ago. But Gene LeBell has a lot of legendary stories, very, very crazy life, not to mention all of his battles in combat sports and his roles as an actor and stuntman and all of that. He had a crazy match with Milo Savage in 1963 that resulted in really, really pissed off fans. It was one of the first ever boxer MMA matches. There were all these stipulations that, kind of put LeBell at a disadvantage, and he was still able to beat this guy in his hometown. He also refereed the Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki match in 1976. There's also a big urban legend that he choked out and made Steven Seagal piss himself, which I don't deny, or which I don't doubt at all. Steven Seagal, of course, denies this because he's a fucking fool. But I have no doubt if a shoot fight happened between Steven Seagal and Gene LeBell, Steven Seagal would die. This was just apparently an exhibition where he choked him. Steven Seagal said, "I can't be choked out," and Gene LeBell says, "Yes, you can." Choked him out, and Steven Seagal pissed his pants. And to this day, LeBell doesn't even really confirm the story. He goes, "Dude, 30 people were standing there, just ask them." Where Steven Seagal's like, "One guy can say it didn't happen," and Gene's like, "I don't even need to say anything. Talk to the 30 people that were standing there. Go talk to them, and they will tell you what happened." And they all tell the same story. So that was kind of interesting to read up on. He was also tried for murder in the 1970s, but acquitted, but was charged with a lesser charge of, I believe, driving the getaway car of the murderer or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, Gene LeBell has quite the life, had quite the life, and his hands and fingerprints are on a lot of mixed martial arts, pro wrestlers, and movies, and it's everywhere. He is going to leave a lasting impression on the business and on Hollywood, and rest in peace, Gene LeBell. Big loss this week. That pretty much does it for the news. We got to get into a little bit of Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown, Rampage, that type of shit. And I want to give a little bit of a preview for Clash at the Castle and take a look at a few other things as well. But before I do that, let me just cruise and make sure I'm not missing anything else. I would hate to miss a super chat. I did miss one earlier from Victor Colon. Good to see you, man. Thank you for that $2, and thank you for becoming a member as well. Didn't Flair pass out 2 times in his last match? I thought it was 3. He looked like he was passed out when he was standing up. Just watching him just like, with that open mouth, and he's just, oh my God, he's just a mess. To even think about this guy getting in the ring and attempting that shit again is terrifying to me. And I think he should cut his losses and be happy that he made it out of Nashville alive. Although every time Ric Flair says something ridiculous like this, it makes me think that his end goal is just to die in the damn ring. But I was not interested in this previous last match, and I sure as shit ain't going to be interested in his next one if he does, in fact, have one. So we will see. Could use the likes if you guys don't mind. Keep hitting that thumbs up button for me and for the 230 of you in here right now. If anybody is not a subscriber, please do. And if you are a subscriber and you've been one for a while and you want to be a member of the family, click the join button. Become a member. I'd love to have you. Anywho, let's talk about some wrestling results this week. Let's talk about Raw this past week, just briefly, because I was not here this past week to do a Raw review. I apologize for that. But Raw scored a pretty good rating this week, 2 million viewers and a 0.54 in the share. We had some pretty good matches on the show. Good match between Seth Rollins and Angelo Dawkins, still setting up the inevitable Street Profits split that we can all see coming from a mile away, which is pretty fun. I was loving the Judgment Day Edge, Rey Mysterio, and Dominic stuff because that's been hilarious to watch Rhea Ripley toy with Dominic the past couple of weeks. And Edge had a little confrontation with Rey and Dom in the locker room where Dominic kind of pushed him. And you can kind of see, like, I don't know if this is a direct result of Triple H or if this is something that's just happening naturally, but Dominic has been so incredibly bland and boring. There's literally nothing to this kid at all. He has no personality. He's okay in the ring, but he's not great. And a lot of people don't feel that he's really worthy of the spot he's getting on the main roster. But to see him kind of have Eddie's haircut, wearing Eddie's shirt, the subtle little teases that maybe he could join Judgment Day, I'm ready for him to turn on Rey, and say that Eddie was my real dad or something like that because of the ladder match that we saw back in 2005. But Dominic got speared last week by Edge accidentally. So Edge approached the Mysterios to kind of apologize and make sure that they're all good. But Dominic's still a little angry about it, winds up shoving Edge, and Edge is like, what the fuck? And then Rey's like, it's okay. He's my friend. I've known him 20 years. Dominic, it's cool. Chill out. And Dominic's mad because Rey is taking Edge's side. So planting little seeds there. Then we get a match between Finn Balor and Rey Mysterio in the ring. Damian Priest gets involved in this thing, and Edge gets involved too. And then at one point, this is my favorite part, Rhea Ripley drags Dominic's bloody carcass out to the ramp. And she holds his head up, and he's got blood on his eye and his mouth, and he's all scraped up. She was also whipping his ass the past couple of weeks too. Rhea Ripley tormenting Dominic on Raw right now, I think, is my favorite part of Monday Night Raw. It's glorious. So at some point, I either want to see these two hook up or I want to see Dominic join Judgment Day. One of those two things has to happen. But what I think is going to be good about this is that, love Dominic or not, I think one of the biggest critiques of Dominic is that he just doesn't do anything. He's just there existing. So this is a change for him. Clearly something's up here. He's starting to have issues with his dad. He's starting to change his look a little bit. He's got some sort of freaky relationship going on with Rhea Ripley. Dominic has dimensions to him now. Thank you, Triple H. That's pretty awesome. After, Rhea brings Dominic's bloody ass out to the stage. Balor winds up winning the match with the coup de grace and beats Rey Mysterio, and we will see where that issue goes in the future. I don't think they have anything scheduled yet for Clash at the Castle, but they will, so we'll keep our eye on that. And like I said, I'll be up here this Monday doing a Raw review to get caught up on all of these storylines that I've been missing. Looks like there is no more Ezekiel, or at least no more Ezekiel temporarily. I don't know if this is another Triple H mention, or another Triple H message or not. I thought the Ezekiel Elias stuff was funny. I didn't think it was going to be funny, but WWE, as they have a habit of doing, tends to fall ass backwards into shit that's over sometimes, and I don't think this Ezekiel Elias stuff on the surface, on paper, had any prayer of getting over, but it did anyway. The lie detector stuff was funny. The Elias and Ezekiel duet was spectacular, even better than the Le Dinner Debonair in my mind. Everything they've been doing is really fun. Kevin Owens has been saving the whole angle just by being Kevin Owens and being so over the top and so crazy about everything and so insistent that he's right, and it's just been comedy gold. It's been great. Well, it looks like they might be moving on from this whole situation here, because there's supposed to be a match between Ezekiel and Kevin Owens. Owens is like hopped up coming out to the ring. He's stomping up the stairs. He even stumbles on him a little bit, and he is just fucking ready, to go. And before the bell even rings, he just waylays Ezekiel, knocks him right out of the ring, throws him into the announce table, picks him up and gives him an apron bump power bomb. I almost said podcast. Shout out to Apron Bump Podcast. Gives him an apron bump power bomb, or apron power bomb, I should call it, and completely wipes out Ezekiel. He's writhing in pain. Referee calls for the bell, throws out the match. EMTs come out, load Ezekiel on the stretcher, and wheel him away. And that looks like that's either going to be now the return of Elias to exact revenge for his brother, or if it's just scrapping the Ezekiel thing completely and they're just bringing Elias back. I can't tell what Triple H is doing here. Is he telling Vince McMahon this was a stupid angle and this is me getting rid of it? Or is this just a way to bring Elias back? Because now Ezekiel can be, off TV. He was clean shaven, so I'm almost wondering if they bring Elias back immediately next week to do a concert, if he's got the fake beard for a while until the beard grows back, or if they wait a little while and Kevin Owens starts doing something else before he's maybe attacked by his Elias, maybe in a month. Maybe a whole month goes by. Owens starts a whole new issue with somebody. Maybe he gets a U.S. title shot, or he's just doing some other shit on Monday Night Raw, and then Elias jumps him or whatever. That could happen there. But it looks like the Ezekiel storyline, at least for now, is going to be over. And it would be well, I guess this could also be a way. So here's another thing they could do. If they want to continue Ezekiel fucking with Owens and saying that him and Elias are two different people, if Elias does show up next week, that should creep out Kevin Owens, because if they're the same person, Ezekiel should be home resting his broken back. But if Elias shows up next week like nothing's wrong, Owens might shit his pants. So we'll see what happens this week on Raw. It's going to be one of those two things. Either way, it was a great segment, and I laughed during the whole thing. I fucking love Kevin Owens, and he's another guy. He's another guy that I'm really excited to watch now that Triple H is in charge. If we can't get a world title belt around Kevin Owens' waist now with Triple H in charge, I don't know when we're ever going to get it. So I think within the next year or so, they should really be pushing Kevin Owens hard. He is spectacular. We had Dakota Kai and Io Sky. And that kind of reminds me of Bayley's promo at the beginning of the show. It's why Bayley is so good. She's a lot like Kevin Owens in that way, is when she accidentally said Dakota, I guess she said one of their names wrong. Did she say Dakota Sky? I think she said Dakota Sky, just like I did. And then she immediately corrects herself. I know I said it wrong, you idiots. You guys made me do it. Just completely covered her tracks. Didn't even allow the fans to jump on her from making the mistake. And it was immediately like, I meant to do that, fuckers. F off. So anyway, Dakota Kai and Io Sky, Kai Sky, I don't know what you want to call them. They defeated Dana Brooke and Tamina to advance in the women's tag team tournament. So, some of the teams in the tournament were kind of thrown together. I think they've even brought up Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark to be a part of this, I think. And some of these teams are kind of just tossed in there. Some fans didn't really know if they liked that or not. But I'm okay with it. I don't think, the tag team titles are on the shelf. Triple H doesn't want to keep them shelved for too long. But I don't know if you really have enough time to start developing a whole bunch of tag teams all of a sudden and then throw them in the tournament. So I think if you have an end result here, like if you're just going to put the belts on Dakota Kai and Io Sky, then it doesn't matter who the fuck else is in the tournament if they're just set to win it anyway. So you could have the two of them set to win it, and then Naomi and Sasha Banks come out and confront the two of them, and that would be a pretty damn good tag team match. Dakota and Io versus Naomi and Sasha, I'd be into that. So I'm not too upset about the tag team tournament in the women's tournament because WWE never really had any women's tag teams to begin with. You could make the argument that they should have waited a little while until they developed tag teams, but that might be a few months off before they do that. If they just want to get the belts reintroduced now and then develop tag teams around it, maybe that would be a better option. I don't know. But either way, I'm much more comfortable with Triple H in charge of a tournament like this than Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. So we will see, but right now it feels like Dakota and Io are really penciled in here because it's a very, they're brand new team. Strong faction just formed with Bayley at SummerSlam. They're easily the best team in this tournament. To me, you got to belt them up. So that's what I'm expecting to happen, which is why I'm not too worried about the other team members just thrown together. Raquel and Aaliyah, I think, is another team that is just there existing. I think this is all kind of designed for Sky and Dakota to win the titles. And if we do get Sasha and Naomi coming back, I pitched the idea back at SummerSlam after the results. When we saw Bayley return, I'm like, I'd pitch Sasha joining the group and Naomi or something. I'd make a huge faction with all five of them, but that might not turn out to be the case. We had Bobby Lashley defending his U.S. title on Raw as well against Tommaso Ciampa. And what was great about this match is that it was like a fresh match. We haven't seen this before. And last Monday's Raw took place in Cleveland. So a week out, many fans were speculating that this is where we could see Johnny Gargano. Even earlier on in the day, Tommaso Ciampa tweeted out Johnny's little winking smiley face thing, which was kind of a hint. And the week before that, if you notice, WWE also tweeted out that hint to Sasha and Naomi. They said, with SummerSlam now in the rear view, who will make the biggest statement on Raw? Then you have Ciampa teasing Gargano. I like what they're doing. They're making you think we might see these people. Then we don't see them, but then they hit you with them maybe the following week or something. So I think WWE's rear view statement tweet was meant to subtly tell you they're coming back, but it ain't going to be tonight when you think. It's going to be some other time. And I think the same goes for Johnny Gargano. And in the match with Ciampa and Lashley, Corey Graves, I think, made at least one reference to Gargano. And I think Ciampa put Lashley in one of Gargano's moves. And there was a couple little references to DIY as well. But in the end, we had Lashley tapping out Ciampa with the Hurt Lock and retaining. So I kind of thought maybe Gargano could jump in, help Ciampa win the title, or maybe even turn on Ciampa. I even pinched something crazy of Theory coming down to the ring and cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase on Lashley and winning the U.S. title and reforming the way with Gargano. I thought that would have been fun. I mean, Theory might be, we haven't even seen Theory, by the way, since SummerSlam. That's kind of interesting. But Theory, at least in his character's head, should be saying to himself, I ain't never getting one of them belts off of Roman or Drew or Brock or Cross. I got no chance there. But is there a rule that says I can't cash in against the IC champion or the U.S. champion? WWE really looks like they're elevating both of these titles on both shows. Why not? So I kind of pitched something like that happening. We didn't see any of that happen, but I still think there's a strong likelihood, based on all the references we saw in that match on Monday, that Gargano does make his way back to WWE at some point. Also, I want to mention before the main event on Raw, the great backstage segment that tied into the Dexter Lumis return on Raw. I thought that was so good. So you go backstage and you start the whole thing off. It was just an incredibly well shot and produced segment, and apparently they did it all live. So you start with Doudrop and Nikki ASH talking about the tag team title tournament. Then they pan over to Alexa and Asuka, who are also talking about that, and they're confronted by Bayley and Dakota Kai and Io Sky. And as Bayley is talking shit to Alexa and Asuka in the background, so subtle, and so because WWE doesn't do subtly well. They don't do subtle. They suck at subtle. And so to see in the background behind them a car bashed in on the front and it's being loaded kind of like onto a tow truck or something, all that's kind of going on in the background. And then all of a sudden a bunch of security guards start running from the garage through the shot, and they run right through all of the women, and they like supposedly are running straight to the ring, and they're like, oh, okay. And then the camera just pans right over to AJ Styles making his way to the ring because he's wrestling in the main event against The Miz in a no DQ match. So that whole thing was really well put together, you know, talking about the tag team title tournament, then having Bayley come in, seeing the car crash in the background, security running, AJ walking to the ring, looking around going, what the fuck is that about? It was all really, really well done. And that's just a type of segment that you don't get on WWE programming because it took time to put that together. It took time to think that out and to make it look right. You had to be there and actually set that up and set up those camera angles and where you want everybody to be. You didn't just phone that in. You actually had to give a shit. And that's why I think the segment looked so good and why it was presented so good. And it's nice to see WWE try to do things subtly because they really do sometimes treat us like we're fucking 5 years old. And when they can kind of drop little hints or saying, you know, only the viewers that are paying the most attention are going to see that. You know, that's kind of what I like. It makes you actually need to watch shit and not just, you know, look at it sideways or just watch the YouTube clips. You need to tune in to see what you can catch from week to week. So anyway, we then go to the main event. AJ Styles defeats The Miz in the no DQ match. But as the match is ending, we see basically a man in a hood, and you can see it's Lumis. He walks right up to the guardrail while AJ's music is playing and stands there, and then he is swarmed by security. Security takes him down. As they're pulling him away, he reveals the hood, and his eyes are wide open, and you see that it's really Dexter Lumis, and you don't even really know what he's doing there, but that's the way they've chosen to reintroduce him. Not only is he back, he's not just back in NXT, he's on the main roster, and that's a lot of fun because he's clearly up to something. The car crash had definitely something to do with him. Maybe he bashed his way through the security gates or something and got himself into the parking garage where he could make his way to the ring. Maybe that's what they were doing there. I don't know, but he is now invading WWE Raw. Security took him away, and we'll see what his intentions is, what his motivations are. He showed up at the end of an AJ Styles victory. AJ Styles this week has a United States Championship match against Bobby Lashley, so maybe Lumis is targeting AJ. If Lumis shows up and offers some sort of a distraction to AJ that allows Lashley to beat him, maybe we're getting AJ Styles and Lumis, and Dexter Lumis in some sort of a program. I'd be perfectly fine with that. So we'll see what Dexter does next week, or if he just made his way out there because it was the end of the show and he has different people to target. We will have to see. But pretty decent Monday Night Raw last week from what I could tell, even though I didn't see the show. Or I didn't see the show live, I should say. Deshaun Robinson, appreciate that $2, dude. You're going to be at Raw in D.C. on Monday. That's awesome, dude. Tweet me some pictures. I'll retweet them. Hope it's a good show, and I hope you see some stuff, some fun stuff. Let's talk about SmackDown last night. Again, I don't want to spend a ton of time on the show. Just going to mention a couple of key points that took place on SmackDown. First of all, let's talk about that rating. 2.4 million, 2.6 the first hour got. That's nuts, man. I think it was up from 1.9 or something last week. So that's a humongous increase this week on SmackDown. Not exactly sure why. As much as I think fans are excited that Triple H is now in charge of creative, I don't know if they're that excited for 500,000 people to tune in extra from the week before, but that's very promising numbers for WWE. And you have to wonder what Vince McMahon is thinking. Like, if he's watching this product, clearly he's seeing his son-in-law do a whole bunch of things that he would never have done. But he's seeing the positive results. He's seeing increased ratings. He's seeing fans happy. A lot. Well, I guess Vince doesn't really hang around on Twitter, but he's probably seeing a lot less fans being overly critical of the product. He's seeing a lot more optimism in wrestling. I wouldn't say positivity because fans are asses, but a lot more optimism, I should say, in terms of WWE programming, a lot more excitement. Fans actually seem to care a little bit now. So even though Triple H is doing a bunch of stuff that Vince McMahon probably thinks are terrible ideas, he cannot argue with the results. So I'm curious like how this all sits with Vince, because it's not like Triple H and Vince have no relationship. That's his father-in-law. Even though Vince is out and Triple H is in, it's not like they're never going to see each other, never going to speak, you know. So if Vince McMahon has got some opinions about what Triple H is doing, I'm sure he's going to tell him. But at the same time, Triple H is going to be like, well, old man, I'm in charge now, so I'm sorry that you don't like it, but I ain't stopping. At least that's what I hope he tells his dad. So anyway, SmackDown last night, incredible rating. We saw Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah defeat Shotzi and Xia Li to advance in the tournament. I kind of thought Shotzi and Xia would be a better team to advance there, but they advanced in the women's tag team tournament. Like I said, I think this is all leading to Io Sky and Dakota Kai winning the titles. A lot of stuff going on between Drew McIntyre and the Usos last night. Drew came out to cut a promo. Incidentally, Drew McIntyre is working through a back injury right now that will not require surgery, but does require a lot of rest. So I do believe he was pulled from the house shows this week to rest up for Clash. He is still scheduled for Castlevania to face Roman Reigns for the title, but maybe they're using Cross as maybe a backup if something falls through last minute. But I would hate for Drew, who lost the big WrestleMania main event against Brock Lesnar, to lose this main event as well at Castlevania and this big show on his home continent, and that's just what he deserves. So hopefully McIntyre will be fine. He did wrestle last night as well, but he cut a promo first where he talked about his upcoming match with Roman at the Clash. Scarlett then comes out and gets all the way in the ring, comes out by herself, gets in the ring, stares at McIntyre. He is then attacked from behind by the Usos, and they lay him out. Then backstage, you have Sami Zayn talking to the Usos, knocking on Roman Reigns' dressing room door, and Roman Reigns isn't even in the building, but the dude still gets a dressing room. How badass is that? Usos come out, and they're talking shit to Sami Zayn, and he's like, oh, you got to get your shit together, just like we said last week or whatever. And then McIntyre jumps both of the Usos and lays them out, and Sami Zayn just runs away. Sami Zayn is the best. So he runs away. And then later on, the Usos confront Sami, like, where'd you go, man? You ran away. And Sami's like, no, dude, I was just trying to go get security. So fucking funny. I could watch Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens all day. Just put these two on the same show again and let them work magic, because they are so fucking great. So Usos were mad at Sami for running off, and they're basically telling him, you got one more chance, man, or you're out of the bloodline completely. And then we get the tag match. It's Drew McIntyre teaming up with Madcap Moss to take on the Usos, and Drew and Madcap got the win. I believe Drew claymored Jimmy to win. He claymored one of them for the win, and I'm pretty sure it was Jimmy. They also ran a video for the WrestleMania launch party that took place yesterday or this past weekend in LA at SoFi Stadium, and tickets for WrestleMania have officially gone on sale. Snoop Dogg was there, a whole bunch of celebrities and musical guests. Becky Lynch looked very white when she was trying to dance, which I thought was funny. And there's even a billboard right down the road from me here in San Diego, right in my neighborhood, advertising WrestleMania and the tickets on sale date. I have not bought tickets yet for WrestleMania. I will be at WrestleMania 39 in LA next year, but I've opted not to buy them yet, because every time I buy tickets on the on sale date or through the ticket company where you wait in a queue and you have to take the best available seats, I always hate my seats. So I'm not going to buy them yet. I'm going to wait a couple of months, and I'm going to go to StubHub or any other sort of ticket site where I can get anally violated by their fees and service charges and all that, and the the increase in price. But it does allow me to pick where I want to be and try to give myself the best viewing experience possible. So WrestleMania and shows in general, I'm very picky about my seats. I don't like to be on the floor unless I'm in like row 1 or row 2. Anything else on the floor is not worth it. I don't understand how people can go to WrestleMania and sit on row 60 on the floor. How can you see? You're like your eye level with the ring. Everybody's standing in front of you. You got fucking signs and people. You can't even see anything. I'd rather be up on the first level where, you got where the seats are raised and you can just kind of have a direct line of sight to the ring. So I'm going to kind of look around SoFi and pick the seats that I want, but I'm not fucking with the floor. Ain't no way, unless I'm pay $5,000 for the front row seat. But otherwise, I'm probably going to be somewhere on the first level for WrestleMania. That's where I'm going to eventually look for my tickets once I do buy them. But tickets are on sale now for WrestleMania. For those of you who are going next year, as we get into 2023, make sure you hit me up. We'll have some sort of a big meetup at WrestleMania. It's going to be a kick-ass time. I'm excited. Back to SmackDown now. This was kind of a surprise. We had the return of Hit Row. Out of nowhere, a couple of jobbers in the ring set for a tag team match, and who comes out but Hit Row? Top Dollar and Ashante, and what's the girl, B-Fab or whatever? They're kind of missing their centerpiece here, even though I think Swerve Scott was added to Hit Row late because Top Dollar is basically referring to themselves as the OG3. Swerve was still the centerpiece of that. He was still going to be, and Ashante's great, but Swerve was the guy that I really felt was going to stand out in that group. They don't have him now. It's just back to the three of them, and they basically won a squash. And Top Dollar was on Busted Open Radio today, and he talked a little bit about coming back into WWE and how that came together and his relationship with Triple H and how they always kept in contact with each other, and went on to talk about a lot of how that all happened on Busted Open. I read a little bit of the transcripts, nothing too interesting there, but Triple H always did like them, and a lot of fans were surprised when they were released right after being called up because they made a big impact in NXT. A lot of people liked the presentation. They liked the feel and the vibe of the group. Felt like it was going to be a big deal. And then they were immediately released. And I was never really a big Top Dollar fan. He also kind of had like a reputation or some rumors that maybe he was rubbing people internally the wrong way. I just didn't really like him that much on that Treasures show because I felt like he didn't know what he was talking about. He had said some things that just weren't true, and he had his facts wrong a couple of times. And then I watched him interact on Twitter months ago with the Young Bucks, where he's just doing that thing that all insecure men do, where they brag about how much money they make, or brag about the shoes that they wear, or brag how much money they made last month to the person they're arguing with. That just reeks of insecurity, and I hate people like that. They drive me nuts, and I feel like Top Dollar is just one of those guys where he just can't shut the fuck up about himself. So we'll see. He can't be that bad because Triple H is bringing him back, and they see potential in the Hit Row tag team. That's fine. We'll see how it all goes. But I was never really a big Top Dollar fan to begin with. So we will see what winds up happening with Hit Row. But welcome back to them. Anybody that Triple H is bringing back, I'm always going to be happy to see Triple H taking care of his NXT people. I like it. Ronda Rousey is back as well. She came out to crash the contract signing between Liv Morgan and Shayna Baszler for their championship match at Castlevania. She comes out with a bag of cash, dumps it all over the table, said she had to pay a fine, but she's back now, no big deal. She'll pay fines if she has to because she can afford it. And then security escorts her out, and then Morgan and Shayna come out to do their contract signing. Liv has got the arm all bandaged up there because Shayna's been going to work on that. After they sign the contracts, Shayna attacks Liv, starts working over her arm. Liv is screaming, Liv is crying, and Shayna is about to break her arm, and they go for a move in the corner that Liv is able to reverse and bulldog Shayna Baszler through the contract signing table and just barely escape in that segment with her life, and she was able to scoot out of the ring, holding her arm, screaming in pain. Hopefully she can survive and make it into Clash at the Castle, but I'm kind of hoping Shayna takes the belt off her. Shayna Baszler was one of my favorite NXT competitors, and she's been a goddamn joke since coming up to the main roster. Maybe Triple H can make some changes there. So I'd put the belt right on Shayna at Clash, and I'd set up Baszler and Ronda because they had the little tease in the aisleway there as Ronda was leaving. So I would try to set up Baszler and Ronda Rousey as the match I would try to do as quickly as possible. So as much as I love Liv Morgan, and I'm glad that they gave her the title, let's take it away from her. Put it on Shayna Baszler. That's my thought on it. And speaking of championships, oh my God, how this warmed my heart. Gunther successfully defended his Intercontinental Championship last night in the main event of SmackDown against Shinsuke Nakamura in a tremendous main event match for a championship. I'm so happy that Triple H is putting the U.S. titles and Intercontinental titles in good main event matches. This is the same exact shit I was pitching way back in February when it became known that became apparent that the Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns match at WrestleMania would become a unification match. Once that was done, my thought was, okay, if they're going to unify the titles and we now have one championship, and that champion is going to be floating between Raw and SmackDown, now's your opportunity to do what AEW does with their TNT title. A lot of times you see these banger main events on Rampage or Dynamite for the TNT title. This is what WWE should do with the US and the IC. So I thought these titles would get elevated because of the unification. Turns out I was way wrong on that. The unification didn't do shit to elevate the IC or the US, but Vince McMahon's jackhammer did, because once he started putting the wood to a whole bunch of women and paying them off and he got booted out of head of creative, Triple H is now making my wish come true, and I couldn't be happier. So the fact that we're seeing video package pieces on the history of these championships, it's nice to see Triple H making the steps, telling the production team, say, hey, these titles have been sitting in the toilet for the past 15 years. Let's start doing some vignettes and video packages to remind the fans the lineage, the prestige, the history of these championships, and let's start making these things a big deal again on our TV shows. Seems like a no-brainer. I have no idea why it took Vince McMahon leaving the company to make something like this happen, but it just goes to show you how much he does not give a shit about his own history, his own company's history with some of these titles. The next step, I think, is getting that Intercontinental Championship back around the waist of a current WWE star. So if we can get that ugly-ass belt off of Gunther and put the old classic one on him, oh my God, you're going to have a happy Good Mic Work, that's for sure. So very awesome main event. Great match last night between Gunther and Nakamura. I'm so happy to hear that. In terms of Clash at the Castle, 3 matches currently announced. We've got Drew McIntyre challenging Roman Reigns for the title. We know that. We've got Shayna Baszler challenging Liv Morgan for her SmackDown Women's title. And we have now a 6-women match that was set up on Raw this past week. It's Bayley, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai. I can barely say these names either. Taking on Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, and Asuka. So 3 matches so far. Still a few more to be advertised and to be announced, obviously. So we'll see how that card shakes out as it gets closer to the Clash. But right now, I think they're setting up to have a pretty good show across the pond. That makes me happy. Let's talk briefly about this past week's Dynamite as well. This was such a good show. Quake by the Lake. I thought it was a stupid name, but turned out to be a pretty good show. AEW Dynamite rating this week pulled in 972K, just under 1 million, so they still remain in that incredibly stable area. They really don't, venture too far out of the 800K to 1.1 range. They're usually always in there somewhere and really consistently in the 900,000. So the fans that say things like, oh, AEW's ratings are tanking, I'm like, no, they're not. They're remarkably stable. AEW's had some of the more stable cable ratings than any wrestling company has ever had. So they haven't been growing and doubling and tripling, obviously, because you can't do that in 3 years, but they haven't been taking. They've been actually remaining very stable, been number 1 on cable most nights that they're on there. This is all going to be positive news for networks, despite any mergers or anything that's going on behind the scenes. AEW will not be leaving cable TV, don't worry. And for those of you who think it is and you're getting excited that it might because it means you win the little stupid war, you're wrong. They're not going anywhere. They're here to stay. And Quake by the Lake was awesome. Opened up with a phenomenal fucking coffin match between Brody King and Darby Allin. Jesus Christ, man, 2 minutes into this show, I think Darby nails Brody with the skateboard, and he is a Crimson Mask 2 minutes into the show. A really fun coffin match, overbooked like crazy. Everybody was out there. House of Black was out there, Sting and Julia Hart. All sorts of shit going on. Sting was even in the coffin, and he came out of it, and he had one side of his face painted where he got misted, which was a really cool touch, and all of the little internal storylines going on within the coffin match itself was really interesting, and one of my favorite finishes to a coffin or casket match in history, with Darby Allin choking Brody King over the top rope, and it was just so perfectly executed. It reminded me of Dusty Rhodes choking Billy Graham with the bull rope, and he's got whatever the fuck wrapped around Brody King's neck, and he's choking him over the top rope, and then he lets go, and Brody King's ass kind of hits the apron, and then he falls sideways and lands right into the coffin that's laying on the floor, and when he lands in it, the lid just closes on its own. It was so perfect. Darby Allin wins the match, and it was so fun. This was the absolute definition of what a pro wrestling show should have. Was it overbooked? Yeah, but it was still really fun, and I loved the finish of the match. One thing that did come up in this match, though, is the blood. And a lot of fans have been mentioning that AEW has been going really, really overboard on the blood, and they're bleeding too much. And I do agree. I've said this before. I think AEW could tone down the blood a little bit. And one of the biggest reasons why I said they should tone down the blood is for exact reasons like this. Because, as you guys know, how the fans are. Once they get an idea in their head, once they get something set in their head, they fucking obsess. And I warned AEW about this. I said, if you don't tone down the blood, what's going to happen is when you have a match that does need the blood, the fans are going to be too blind to see that. They're going to be so fixated on the fact that you use too much blood that whenever you bleed, they're going to be like, see, they're bleeding again. I'm like, well, if you followed the Darby Allin and Brody King story, these guys have been attacking each other at conventions. They've been tattooing each other's names on their bodies and shit. This is a very, very personal, violent war between these two. I would be disappointed if we didn't get blood in the Brody King and Darby Allin match. We needed to have blood here. And I even thought it was cool how much blood we had in such a short amount of time. First 90 seconds of the fucking show and there's a crimson mask. That's pretty cool. But it might not be very cool if you already have the idea in your head that AEW uses too much blood. And they do. This is their own fault. The fans complaining about the Darby Brody blood is their fault for not realizing that the feud and the storyline is calling for blood, but it's also not their fault because they have been seeing so much blood in AEW that they've just becoming accustomed to seeing it in every match now. So I think where AEW needs to tone the blood down are in these random Moxley matches. If Moxley is taking on Daniel Garcia, you don't need a crimson mask in that match. I'm sorry. And so I think a lot in the Takeshita match, same thing. I think a lot of these matches where you're having blood for the sake of blood is starting to affect the matches where you do need to have blood. And that's AEW's fault. And that's something that they need to work on because they're going to jade the fans. And that was very apparent this past week when I wasn't home to watch Dynamite, but I was looking at Twitter and everybody was bitching about the blood in Darby Allin and Brody King. Why? Because they've already seen a ton of blood. And now, of course, they're obsessed with this and they're not going to shut the fuck up about it. Where if you look at the Brody and Darby issue, there needed to be blood there. But when you're having blood in every match, it gets old. So basically, I'm blaming both. AEW, cool it on the blood because you know how these fans are, and they're not capable of looking at each individual situation. You know, they can't really do that. They see blood and they're immediately going to think you use too much blood because you do. So tone down the blood so you won't find yourselves in situations where fans are complaining about blood that's needed. Because that's what's going to wind up happening. Fans are going to start bitching about seeing blood when we should see blood. So I think Tony Khan should look at his matches when he books them out, and if he's got blood planned for any match that doesn't need it, get it the fuck out of there. You know, I'm even fine with bleeding every week. You want to bleed once a week, fine. I'm not going to be. I think many fans are using, many tribals anyway, are using this as ammunition. Oh, see, AEW sucks. They use too much blood. Well, I'm never going to not watch AEW because they bleed too much. You know, I'll agree that maybe they should tone it down on the blood, but what is going on with fans these days? You know, back in the day, everybody hated WWE for not using blood and being too PG and everything's childish and everything's for kids. You know, now you've got a violent program where you see blood on half the show. They're saying shit and fuck and all this other stuff, and now all of a sudden fans are offended. Too much blood. Oh my gosh, too much blood. So, I mean, I understand the fans' point. Yeah, I do think there is too much blood, but some fans are getting a little bit too angry about it. I'm like, come on, you're a 35-year-old man, you know, fucking likes heavy metal and fucking has tattoos all over the place. Why is a little bit of blood offending you so much? You should be okay with this. I don't understand. So I think AEW definitely should tone down the blood. That way they don't ruin the blood when you actually need it. And I think that might have been a little bit of what happened to Darby and Brody King here. And of course, we would see blood as well in the main event. We had a great tornado tag on this card as well on Wednesday. Andrade and Rush defeating the Lucha Brothers. Amazing match. Jade Cargill successfully retained her TBS title over Madison Rayne. And really interesting segment went down between the Bucks and Hangman Page. Of course, Hangman came out to save the Young Bucks last week, hinting at the fact that the three of them could team up in the Trios tournament because the Undisputed Elite now have separated themselves from them. Bucks showed up to thank Hangman. He's hanging out in the Dark Order's dressing room, and the Bucks thank him, and we're talking about old times and apologize profusely to Hangman and basically offered him a spot to come join them in the Trios tournament. And Hangman said, hey, I appreciate the offer, and I'm glad I was there able to help, but I got to pick these guys. They're in the tournament. They've had my back. You know, they had my back when you guys didn't. So I'm not competing in the tournament, but I want to be in their corner. This is their opportunity, and I don't really want to fight against them. And the Bucks were like, okay, we get it. And they walk away, and they kind of get pissed at Brandon Cutler as they're leaving. So this whole entire tournament, as you see here, here's the trios brackets here. We got we got a bracket over here on the left side, which is really interesting because the Young Bucks are not going to be with Hangman Page now, and they're going to be taking on Andrade, Dragon Lee, and Rush. And since it's not going to be Hangman, I think we all know who it's going to be, and it's probably going to be Kenny Omega, and I think there's a really, really good chance that Kenny Omega shows up this Wednesday on Dynamite, and I'm really excited to see that. But if you look at that left side of the bracket, you see the Death Triangle taking on Will Ospreay and Aussie Open. So there is a very good and likely chance, I think. Well, maybe not. Death Triangle could very well win that, but I really want to see Ospreay and Aussie Open face the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega in the semifinals there. That would be incredible. So let's hope that's what they are setting up, and we see Kenny this week. And of course, these championships will be crowned at All Out on September 4th. But that's a really interesting potential semifinal matchup we have set there between those two teams. So Hangman basically tells the Bucks no. We'll see if he winds up turning on the Bucks and reforming the Elite with the Bucks, or if he winds up Hangman turns on Dark Order, I should say, reuniting with the Bucks and with Kenny Omega at some point down the road. But at least for right now, he is not. And then in the main event was great. We had Jon Moxley taking on Lionheart. Chris Jericho, everybody was kind of joking that Jericho was threatening Moxley by saying, "You're going to face a less experienced version of me with less moves and less, and less miles." But that's what he wanted to do. Came out in the old school Lionheart tights. He had an airbrush vest. Pretty sure he still had Judas here. He should have tried to use his old WCW generic theme. Would have been really funny. But pretty good match. Both guys, I believe, in this were bleeding as well, which again, lends to that there's too much blood argument in AEW. In the end, Moxley is able to choke out Chris Jericho and win the match and retain the interim title. Everybody runs out. The entire Jericho Appreciation Society, including Ty Conti and Sammy Guevara, who just recently got married. Congratulations to them. And the Blackpool Combat Club. So you had you had Claudio out there, and everybody kicking ass. And that's when we had the return of CM Punk, which was rumored in the beginning of the day, because we are getting very close to All Out, and you need to set up your main event match or your title match, whatever that's going to be. And most people were speculating that Punk would be back by then, so this felt like a really good place to bring Punk back, and it was. Cult of Personality hit. He came out, helped clear the ring. Nice, good-looking stare down with Mox, where Mox just flipped him off and left. And I liked Mox's attitude. He had a great promo earlier on in the show where he said this thing should not even be referred to as the interim title. And he's right. Mox has been working his ass off. Moxley deserves a lot of credit right now. He's been working every week, wrestling every week, defending the belt on most weeks, and making a really good argument and story that maybe it's not such a done deal that CM Punk's just going to beat him on All Out and resume his title run. Moxley is making a definite case for himself as being the right guy to carry that title, because I think he's done a tremendous job with the belt. So it sets up a really interesting match at All Out. I like that Moxley kind of flipped off Punk as he left. Of course, Moxley's involved in the Blackpool Combat Club. Punk doesn't really have a club. Maybe Punk can join a club. I don't know. Punk and Danielson have got to have a run in at some point down the road as well. I think Danielson's got a 2 out of 3 falls or something with Garcia next week, I believe. So Punk is back now. Looks like the match with Moxley is set, even though they have not officially announced it. Even the announcers were saying that they hadn't heard of anything from Punk in terms of being cleared, so he might not even be kayfabe cleared yet. We'll have to see, but now that he's back, and he was hopping around on his injured foot after everybody left, hopping around on one foot, showing everybody that everything is good to go. And since All Out is still almost a month away, 3 weeks away, he should be good to go by the time we get there. So hopefully it'll be Punk and Mox, and Tony Khan will put over whoever he wants to put over. But at this point, unless they do some things on TV in the next couple of weeks that changes our mind, it feels like Punk's going to resume his run starting at All Out. But can't say enough good things about Moxley and the way he was able to carry that belt and make everything pretty seamless. The fact that Punk got injured and that was such a heartbreaking, devastating loss, they were really able to weather that storm with such a quality champion like Moxley while he was gone. So good stuff there. Punk and Mox obviously set for a showdown at All Out. Last night, didn't catch much of Rampage. The only thing I saw was the Parker Boudreaux. I used to think his name was Parker Bordeaux. It's Parker Boudreaux. That's what it is. He has signed officially with AEW. He is now All Elite. He is a member of this Trust Busters team, or trio, or whatever, with Ari Daivari. And earlier on in the night, Parker destroyed and squashed Sonny Kiss in a match. A lot of fans were pissed that Sonny Kiss got squashed. And later on Rampage, Orange Cassidy defeated Ari Daivari, where in the end we saw, I guess, Parker was out there, the best friends are out there, and Sonny Kiss runs in while there's a scuffle or whatnot and kicks Orange Cassidy in the balls and winds up joining the Trust Busters. So Sonny turned heel, is now away from the best friends, kicked Orange Cassidy in the balls and broke the hearts of Cassidy and Chucky and Trent, and will now be a member of this Trust Busters group with Parker and Daivari. So very interesting stuff there. Kind of a weird show on Rampage last night. Didn't check out much of it, but did catch some of the Parker Boudreaux stuff, and he is now officially All Elite, and that was the guy that was in NXT that WWE felt was going to be, kind of like a Brock Lesnar type of guy, and he's okay. I just never thought he was really that much like Brock. I think he might be as good, or at least as good as Lars Sullivan, perhaps, but he's in AEW now, and we will see what AEW does with him. So that is the end of my notes here. Sorry for kind of running through the end of those results kind of quick there, but I was running out of time. And I wanted to make sure I was able to answer any super chats in here and answer any more final questions that have been rolling in this last couple of minutes here. I need to start with Spaz Phoenix, who has chimed in with $10. Thank you so much, dude, and I'm glad you're here. Hey, Greg, Kat, and chat. Here's what we do. Roman versus Drew versus Cross at Clash, 2-fall triple threat match, 1 for each belt. Then Theory cashes in. New champ on SmackDown is Theory. New champ on Raw is Cross. That takes both belts away from Roman Reigns. The only issue I have with that is I'm keeping that Universal title on Roman for as long as possible. Get as close to Hogan's run as you can, which is about 4 years. I don't think they'll make it that far, obviously, but I think it should be a situation where one belt is on the line, or 1 fall for each belt, but Roman still does keep one of them. And that's why I thought using Roman and Cross as a way to get one of those belts off of Roman without beating Roman is something they would do, especially if Roman refuses to put both belts on the line or something like that. But yeah, the 2 out of 3 falls, with a belt on the line for each one, that could work. And Theory is still floating around out there with that briefcase. He hasn't been on TV since SummerSlam, which means Triple H just doesn't like him, or Triple H has big plans for him. One or the other. We're probably about to find out. 10 more from Spaz. Also a cheap plug. I'm starting a new weekly series on the Triple H era to drop every Monday morning. There's one up already, and one will go up this Monday. So check out Spaz's channel to hear his thoughts on Triple H and all of his dealings now that he is in charge of WWE. Creative K-Dog's Kennel, our good friend Kevin. Welcome to the family, my friend, who has just become my kayfabe brother. Lots of good members joining throughout the stream. It's been great. Very glad you're here, Kevin. Welcome to the family as always. And he's been a big supporter for a number of years. He's donated to have videos done and streams done as well. And he's a great dude. And he says here, Greg, I've supported you for a number of years, and I have nothing but the highest level of respect for you. I'm honored and privileged to help support your channel. I appreciate it, Kevin. You are the greatest. Thanks again, my friend. Hollywood Guy, appreciate the $5. Hello, in your honest opinion, who do you want to see take Roman's belt? I would like to see Cody or Cross. Yeah, I think with Roman, one of those belts, in my opinion, I feel like one of those belts is going to be taken off of Roman without beating him. I think there's going to be some sort of triple threat situation, either at Clash or following up on Clash. Maybe Drew falls short at Clash because Cross interferes or something, and then the next pay-per-view here in the States, they do a triple threat for the title where Drew or Cross pin each other, winning the title, allowing Roman to remain Universal Champion on SmackDown, and then Drew and Cross can... Well, maybe Roman goes for, I don't know what the fuck they do. Maybe Roman takes the Universal to Raw and the belt becomes red again. I have no idea, but I feel like they could do it that way. And then I feel like Cody should be penciled in for WrestleMania at this point. But Triple H might have a different Cody view than Vince did. So we will have to see on that. Who else did I miss? Spectra, good to see you, man. Another channel member popping in with $5 more. Hey, Greg, just saw you were streaming and wanted to say hi. Also, with Triple H in charge, could we get a WWE AEW Forbidden Door style show. I would not rule anything out with Triple H. I really wouldn't. But I still think something like that is a ways off. Working agreements with WWE and other companies, or AEW and other companies, I think are more likely, but AEW and WWE are a little bit more direct competitors, so I don't know, because they're the two biggest games in town. So we will see. It is possible. I think I got everybody on the supers there, and we should be good. I think I caught up on all the members who have joined as well. And yeah, I think we are good to go. So I got to go ahead and cut this stream short because I got to get out of here and head to work. But thank you very much for being here this afternoon. Next week, we should have our shit together a lot more because I'll be a lot less busy at work and a lot more time to prepare for the podcast and stuff like that. But make sure you join us tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be doing a watch-along of SummerSlam 1990. Monday night after Raw, we'll be up here for a Raw review. And this Wednesday, we'll be up here to watch AEW Dynamite together. So there's a lot going on. In the meantime, please subscribe, hit the like button, become a member, or do all three. I would appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday, and I'll catch you tomorrow night for SummerSlam